What is going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Rage, back another Outriders World Slayer video to bring to you, and today we're going to be covering the last two videos, or the last two weapons that have actually dropped over on the Outriders socials, and being able to cover what's so special about them. If you haven't actually already seen them already, make sure you have headed over to the Facebook or the Twitter to be able to get a good look at these videos, but if not, make sure you stay tuned to this, because we will be showing you all the footage that's actually good for us, and obviously being able to discuss about it in the background. Make sure you have dropped a like and a subscribe, make sure you stay tuned for every single bit of Outriders World Slayer content that's going to be coming your way, and let's get right into it. Alright, so we're going to look at this in order as obviously when they got released. So day 4, because obviously we've already covered 3 in the previous video, make sure you have already checked that out as well, is going to be the Charred Lance. Now the Charred Lance is a legendary double gun, and overall aesthetically it's very pleasing to the eye. It's probably one of the most stunning games we've actually ever looked at. It's very realistic, and on top of that it just also adds that little kind of mystic kind of feel to it as well. So the main thing that comes with the tier 3 mod on this is called Death Ray, where aiming down sights forms an anomaly beam that deals 202,621 damage to enemies when made with contact. Now this is at item level 62, so obviously we haven't got much to be able to compare this with, but the fact that we haven't even reached obviously like Claymore Torrent kind of like heights, when obviously we know what Claymore Torrent already does at like level 50, means that we're actually not going to be seeing too much damage, because obviously this is 12 levels higher than that, so therefore it's going to have to have some kind of like really quick ticking kind of system or kind of cooldown kind of built in. We don't know how like often this beam actually hits forward. Like if it, for example, if this was every single second it's dealing that amount of damage, I don't think it's necessarily going to be worth it in the long run. I just think it's kind of like very mediocre if that's going to be the case. But the main thing to actually take away from this is because it just says aiming down sights. Now because this is kind of just an aiming down sights, it doesn't ask us to be able to fire the gun whatsoever, so this is actually going to be very ammo conservative on top of that, because this also means that we can actually shoot the gun at the same time, so the mod is actually going to be dealing damage at the same time as we actually shoot the exact same target, and it's going to be something that's consistently staying up, rather than something like Claymore Torrent where we have to wait for a 2-second cooldown for it to come back. So I do think this potentially could be really fun to be able to actually see this in action, and obviously get like mess about with, but obviously it's all going to hold down dependent on that cooldown. So obviously, is it a case that it ticks for every like 100 milliseconds? Is it a case it's 500 milliseconds, etc, etc? And that's the main thing that's really going to hold this back. If it's too long, then obviously it's just gonna feel a bit too slow on the same respect. It's going to feel like more like a tier 1 kind of mods in terms of like damage they'll actually be dealing, but if it's actually on the quicker side, then it's going to feel like it's going to melt enemies, and on top of that it's just going to feel so powerful in your hands. Now obviously this doesn't even factor in kind of like modifiers that we're going to be seeing, because obviously we've seen like Moaning Winds, and we've seen Claymore Torrents hit for millions points of damage. Does that mean that we can actually stack this up to the point where we're actually able to see 1,000,000 damage every single tick? And that's probably what's going to excite me the most. Is there a way that we can actually make this into a build of its own, and we can just go around without shooting any single shots whatsoever in this game? And that's yeah, it's a completely different kind of playstyle. I think that's quite unique to this gun. Now if you shift our attention away from the Charred Lance and go to our next day, which is day 5, which is going to be the Mythos Light Machine Gun. Now the Light Machine Gun, which is obviously legendary, is absolutely stunning in nature, as with every single legendary gun that PCF actually do drop when it comes to this game, but the tier 3 mod is what's got me so excited. So the tier 3 mod that comes on the Mythos Light Machine Gun is going to be Omen, where shots launch a cover-piercing anomaly projectile that inflicts bleed, deals 1.296777 damage, and applies a status that increases damage received by 30% for 3 seconds. Now this does have a kind of low, kind of long cooldown of 4 seconds compared to like other mods that we've actually seen in the past, but keep in mind that this is item level 62. The only problem that we have with this is not being able to compare it back to something like Claymore Torrent to be able to get an idea as to how much damage this actually deals compared to some of the higher damage dealing kind of mods when it comes to the game. Now Omen on paper sounds intense, it sounds amazing, and it's probably going to be one of those top tier mods. The reason why is because it just does everything. The fact that we've got something that can inflict a bleed status, which obviously we've got things like Tainted Blood, we've got Devastators that are actually able to benefit from this even further with things like the Seismic Commander set. We've got Impales that actually can benefit from being like a target that's already bleeding, or we've got all that kind of good stuff, and obviously their PAX points on top of that. And there's a couple of other kind of like random mods like Vampiric Mags, for example, that obviously benefit from enemies that have been inflicted with bleed. The fact that we can now on top of that deal a huge amount of damage, the fact that we're doing almost 1.3 million points of damage compared to something like the death ray, which we looked at, which was around about 200k, which is at the exact same item level. We're doing 6 times the damage, and on top of that, we're also getting a 30% damage multiplier on top of that for 3 seconds. All of this rolled into one package is just insane. It genuinely has me so happy, and I genuinely think this is probably going to be the one of the most sought after mods when it comes to this game. Now, the fact that it is a 4 seconds does feel like it's obviously it's going to take a while to come down. I do believe this is also the gun that actually benefits from the kind of like the 2 prongs that pop up on the front of your gun. So the transforming gun video that we actually have done before, link found right here. And the fact that we've got like a visual indicator to let us know. It also does seem to be a very slow traveling projectile, which can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing, because the bad side of things is obviously any enemies that are at distance means it's going to be kind of difficult to be able to obviously track them, to be able to trace them, because they can easily dodge and roll out of the way of this. Whereas the fact that it's a good thing, because that does also mean that if you are able to predict it right, you can actually predict enemies that are trying to rush themselves to cover, because this does pierce through cover. And this definitely is the one that's got me most excited out of all 5 of the guns, because all the mods have definitely been great. All of them on paper sound absolutely amazing, but the fact that we're getting a 30% damage increase means that we're getting something similar along the lines of like pre-patch kind of like Fortress, for example, or it's kind of an easier way to be able to proc Fortress, because we only have to fire the 1 bullet, whereas the current Fortress that we have does require 3 consecutive hits to be able to obviously get triggered, and obviously it's got a kind of a weird cooldown in the middle, or kind of like a of 0.2 seconds, where some guns actually fire faster than that, which means that it can take more than 3 shots in theory to be able to obviously get that to trigger. This is going to probably work best with kind of like anomaly power builds, but I do also see firepower builds potentially actually getting use of this. I mean, just take this for example. If we actually could get a burst AR that actually comes with Dark Sacrifice, whether we actually mod that on ourselves or not, but then it comes to the Apocalypse mod, and let's say theoretically we can get Omen on that. The fact that we're now being able to deal bleed, we're able to deal a huge amount of mod damage, it pierces through cover, which obviously potentially could stagger enemies to be able to obviously get them to poke their heads out, which should make it a little bit easier to be able to obviously finish them off. And the fact that we're now doing 30% more damage to every single enemy, it's going to be an absolute elite killer with this. I genuinely do think this is probably going to be top tier for both anomaly power and firepower builds, and I'm really excited to actually see what else comes out of this. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up all the 5 legendary weapons that we've actually seen so far over on the socials. I was hoping to actually see a couple more after I came back from holiday, but unfortunately, these are the only ones that we've had leaked so far to us. Let me know in the comment section down below which of the 5 is your favourite, and let me know which of the ones you're going to be having to be able to grind pretty much straight away. Thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. Thank you so much to the Babylonian family, as always, for their continued support. It really does mean the world to us. Let us know in the comment section down below how you feel about that, and as I always say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on our next video.